Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, boss.
Yeah, welcome to another session of Operation Warp Drive, Writing for the Army and Renewal of the Profession. I did my radio voice just for you guys. So that was some exhilarating music. We are still working on that. You know, we opened up last session with some AC/DC, and then we realized that with certain YouTube functionality, you have to be careful about which music you use, or you might get your video taken down. So we're still exploring some music options for you. But that was the chill hip hop. That was from Thornton Krause. That's one of his favorites, chill hip hop.
Hey, sir. John Philip Sousa, free copyright. Hey, we're good to go. Army style. You know what I'm saying? Your national march, sir. Don't forget.
I forgot about the band. We have the band director on here. I forgot about that. Thanks, Chief. Hey, so look, we are here today for writing. That is what we do. And so we have a very special guest this morning. Straight from Building 8, Camp Mabry, Joint Force Headquarters, we have the director of the Joint Staff, Brigadier General Tanya Trout. Ma'am, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, or still probably morning for some. Thanks. Welcome me to having be the guest on this professional writing session too. So super excited about it. I think it's going to be. I'm really impressed with what Division's done in a short time, and I really believe this is a critical skill set that you need, whether in military or professional life. So I'm glad that we're taking the time, and all the people who are able to join to take the time.
Well, excellent. Right on. Thank you, ma'am. And so just so you're tracking, so we have the writing roundtable here. So these are the usual suspects. So Matt Cox, he's our guy behind the scenes. He helps us get us going. He works through a lot of technical issues like we did this morning. So and we have our resident PhD student, TJ Clifton. You know, every roundtable, ma'am, they need someone who is a reminder of constant writing sorrow. And so when you're in a PhD program, sometimes you don't get to write what you want. You have to write a lot of stuff. And so that's TJ. Good morning, TJ. And then we have our conductor, Jeff Lightsey. He's the 36th Infantry Demand conductor. He responds to a lot of things. I like to call him the orchestrator of things good. But he's out there too. Good stuff from Jeff. And then we have Sergeant First Class Krause. He's our resident research and development man. So he does R&D for us. He's the guy that, the laser shots. So he does a lot of our AI and fact checking for us. Not in a negative sense, like it's been taken off recently in the news, but just if we have a question and we don't know the answer, Jared is the guy that's going to run it down for us in the show. So unfortunately, we didn't have our resident PAO, Major Nadine Wiley. She's actually out today working on some U.S. Army South stuff, but we do have a new member, Command Sergeant Major Nathan Warfield. So he joins us from the field. Sergeant Major, how you doing out there?
Hey, doing good, sir. Glad to be here.
All right, perfect. So, ma'am, that's the writing roundtable. You gave me a great bio, ma'am. I got it from your staff officer from Building 8, and man, what a storied career. So you have 30 years in the service. I see that you also graduated from National Defense University. So just kind of some friendly banter here, ma'am. So when looking at all those positions, knowing you went to National when or where do you think you did the most writing? Oh, it looks like we're having some connecting issues. Ma'am, you out there? All right.
You could always introduce me once
we'll give Starlink some time to catch up.
Can you hear us, sir?
Yeah, we got you. Can you hear us?
Okay, we're just not going to have a camera for right now. We just lost power.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Right on. Okay.
That's
Hey,
okay.
so
No one
I
wanted
don't
to
know if you
see
got back.
my face. You guys can just go on Teams, and there's a lovely photo of me as a in my general officer backlighting. So for anybody who needs to see me, so sorry guys
All
for that. You know, as a good signal officer, forgot my charger for my personal laptop. Of course, you know, the network, the military network didn't work. So I'm on my third tertiary. I got Colonel Weedman to loan me his personal laptop. So we are good to go. So like all good officers, right? We just adapt and overcome.
Right on, ma'am. Hey, ma'am, quick question for you. So I was rolling through your bio, knowing all the different experience, and you went to National Defense University. So a little bit of friendly banter. Where do you think, or when do you think you had to do the most writing when you look at all those different assignments and stuff?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, again, obviously college, but then when you go back to college again, which you will several times, they really put you back through the rigors of going back to being in a college. So the first semester of what you do when you're at senior service college is write like you're back in college. And as many of you know, professionals here, we in the Army do not write like that. We write bluff, short, sweet, right? We take out a lot of nouns, adjectives, anything descriptive. We want to get bluff to the fact, and they teach us that's not necessarily what the rest of the government expects to see. And you know, obviously in corporations, and we, and especially in the state of Texas, still a lot with outside civilian agencies, and so we have to be able to pivot to write as we need to, right, for the narratives and descriptives we need what the civilian agencies work with, and then of course go back to the military style writing. So then the second half of the semester, if they taught you how to write again, is they teach you back to how to be succinct and write at the senior level, leader level, because a lot of times we as officers want to tell all the details in the world because we need to make sure our superiors or subordinates know everything. But really learning how to write succinctly is the challenge that you learn in the second semester.
Yeah, no, good points, man. We were just processing that this morning for sure. And with the writing roundtable here too, part of what we're going to do here in this session is talking about some of our favorite pieces, favorite times we had to write, like General Charles just went through, and maybe we're going to talk a little bit about some of what we're currently reading. But what we want to do this session, folks, is we want to take you through an exercise where we show you some tools. We show you some tools that if you were to look across the spectrum of what's out there, hey, I got a favorite fiction book. Hey, I got a go-to military journal. I mean, I know Line of Departures out there where you can just surf different things. And you're like, there are certain people who resonate with us when we read them. And so when we find those folks, or we find the uniqueness of how they put something together, that offers a model for us to kind of get after, like how we can approach a problem set. So we're going to advance to looking at 3 different models. So check it out, folks. So when we read stuff, and General Try hit this, we're professionals. We have to read professionally. We don't have a lot of time to read an 11-page document. We just don't. And so some of these things that we say, hey, we're going to learn how to model writing from reading. We're going to learn how to write learning or mimicking structure. And then the last tool is we're going to show you how to write using like a model evidence use. So that last one is, that's going to be stuff like, and Mariah can really comment on this because this is one of these JAG tools, right? This is like, hey, you got to get background, you got to get exhibits, you got to get arguments, you got to have methods, and then you have to cite it, right? So when you're writing papers, Mariah, I mean, you've looked at stuff before and you're like, hey, this is how this guy cited that. I mean, that's a model, right? Does that work?
Yeah, so like in legal aspects, we have several different tools that we use, but we call it the Blue Book. We keep that handy, but I always like to go to whatever thing that I'm mimicking, look at how they did it, and then just verify with my Blue Book or whatever tool I happen to be using at the moment. But you forgot to give me an intro, but now you need the JAG. So I see how it goes.
Yes, we always need JAG for sure. So, but some people may offer up a concern here, right? Like, hey, we're modeling after others, we're mimicking structure. Is that borderline plagiarism? What is that? Jared, do you have what do you got for the definition of plagiarism here? I know you got that pulled up already.
Right, we do, right? So plagiarism, the act of using someone else's works, ideas without their permission. Now, there's 5 different types of plagiarism. Direct plagiarism, which I'm copying it word for word. You can also plagiarize yourself on previous works. You have mosaic plagiarism, where you kind of grab some of your words and some of, the JAG's words and put them together. You can also paraphrasing and then accidental plagiarism.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I noticed you didn't use air quotes when you said any of those things. So what is that?
I did. I was trying to focus on my words and not my hands. You're not supposed to talk like this.
Okay. Yeah. So, look, when we're doing staff work, and we're like, hey, go grab your PowerPoint and build. Like, that's something different than actually writing a paper and throwing it out there and putting your name on the line and like, hey, I'm trying to get credit for something I published, right? When we're doing staff work and we're all working together, we're in the same direction. The credit's spread across every single officer. So there's no guilt in like taking a PowerPoint you've used before and move it again and use it again to solve a problem. There's no guilt in that at all. But if you're going to throw out an article and you're going to publish and you want like, hey, I did this, and you want to take credit for doing something, you're going to have to like pay attention to what Jared's talking about, right? So, TJ, when you look at some of the PhD stuff that you've done, right, and you probably take copious notes when you do research. If you accidentally forget to cite in your note page like who you got that from, and then try to go back into your paper and use that, that's accidental plagiarism, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you have to be careful because sometimes you're reading so much that the thoughts that come out could be something that you've already read just, a week, 2 weeks ago, because it makes sense so once you're through finding that piece that you're going to cite, and then you add on the next sentence of it, kind of explaining it in your own terms, it could be something that you might have accidentally read before. So it's tricky because, at some point, when you're quoting other people's work and there's been so much work on a certain topic, it all kind of overlaps, right? So there have been instances where I quote or paraphrase, and there's 6 different citations I have to use just for that one sentence I wrote because they're all aligned. All 6 of those people wrote something similar.
Yeah, no, it's hard to have a fresh idea when there's a lot of stuff out there. But sometimes you want to show that other people laid the groundwork for you so that your fresh idea can take legs and it can grow. And so, you cite either in direct quotations or paraphrasing, you cite the idea where it came from, and then you build on it.
Hey, sir.
Yeah.
Hey, sir. And we talked in that previous, and there's people on here that weren't in the previous session, but so much of this overlaps. We in the military and, on OLS. And so in dealing with teams and dealing with information that we had before, hey, we're going to go back and reference this material or use this material and change this material. So just kind of in a broader sense, how many of us on here have taken a memo instead of actually, reading the reg and going through that part of it. Hey, I've got a memo from a previous commander. I've got a folder, and we're reorganizing that or putting new information in it. That's not plagiarism, but we've all probably done that to some extent, and it sort of kicks that can down the road without really going into, hey, that's form. Is it our stuff? Is it somebody else's stuff? Is it blurry? Again, getting on here and talking about copyright. It's the same thing musically. Copyright and plagiarism, those 2 things are very much linked. And so just there's just so much of what we do is builds on the people that came before us. Where is our originality, and where does it come from? Where's it start?
Yeah, that's excellent. So that being said, what we're not going to do this session is plagiarize. So but we are going to model ourselves. We are going to look at like, how can we model others? How can we mimic structure? And then how can we use these tools to effectively get after it? Now, I pulled up an article on from Military Review, but I'm sure some of you guys have some books that you guys have liked. Maybe you got your top 5 that are just like your favorite. I mean, when I think of books that I've probably read, that the way that they're built, the way that they're written, the words that are used that really resonate with me. I mean, for the longest time as a young man, I probably read F. Scott Fitzgerald's, Great Gatsby every summer. It was just a turning point for me. I loved it every summer. It was a great summer book. And then as I kind of went into the military and I saw some of these other things out there, Sir Basil Hart's biography on Sherman, right? It's not just history. It's not just Civil War. It talks tactics, operations, strategy. I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I just finished the Memory of Empire by Arkady Martine. I mean, it's, we have a host of resources that, and every time you read something, it kind of shapes in how you think and how you build, because reading builds writing. So I know some of you guys out there, you have some books. Matt Cox, what are some of your go-to books that you like? I know you sent me a copy of Atomic Habits, but what else do you like besides self-help?
Yeah, that was actually the one I was going to mention. I'm on a guilty pleasure at the moment. But yeah, Atomic Habits and those who haven't read it, I would similarly reference you to Admiral McRaven's book that he wrote in the speech that he gave at the UT graduation on making your bed.
Mm-hmm.
It talks through, a very small thing can quickly snowball downhill into new habits formed. And the next thing you know, you're a completely different person.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Man,
that's a quick read too. And it's great if people are on here. Hey, you want to start someplace. That book is a quick read, but it's a great read because you can apply it like that day. and it builds. Yeah. Something that you can put in practice. That's good. Ma'am, Joan Trout, you have any reads that are like your go-to, like, hey, these are some books that really resonated with me, or some articles?
Yeah. So, I mean, I probably don't have a lot of time on my hands when it comes to reading, and obviously probably don't have a long memory when it comes to when I was young, but I will tell you some things like I've read recently that some are self-help, some are strategy, some are, again, a little bit of fiction. So recently, honestly, for school that I went to, I read The Long Game by Rush Doshi, and it's about the Chinese strategy, their grand strategy. Talks about historical perspective, talks about present time, and talks about the future. For those in the military, it's not a long read. It's pretty entertaining and light. I had an expectation to be a lot harder to read, but I would say if you haven't read that, you should. I'd also say for everyone, if you don't know, because I just found this out. So for everyone in the military, there's a DoD MWR website, and you can actually check out books through web links, through whatever you Kindle, Audible, whatever, for a period of time. So you don't have to buy them. Mm-hmm. So, you just check it out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they say you have a copy, and then you get that for that period of time. So for a lot of these things, we're saying, if you like to read and you want to start reading more, this is a way to do it without spending a lot of money, and then invest in the ones you want to keep and you want to buy long game. Yeah. But that's a good one. I, like Major Cox, also do look at always trying to be better. And so the book I just recently, it was Audible, actually. This was in gym work, but The Courage to Be Disliked. So a little bit of self-help, but where you really look to self-analyze yourself and things that you can always be better, right? Take time to see how you can continuously evolve. Even as a general officer with 30 years in, I don't believe I know it all, and I'm always looking how to be better. So that's a good one that I thought. Of course, it's got a follow-on book, so and it's The Courage to Seek Happiness. So that's next. So again, got to be disliked first, and then find out how to be happy. So haven't gotten to that one yet. And then guilty pleasure, but also school related, but got fiction, but a lot of truth, is Ghost Fleet by P.W. Singer. So again, it's a fictional book, but it's about, about basically when China attacks America, but it all starts with cyber attacks. And it really resonates with a lot of these things and innovation and modernization do. All this technology we have, Restream, Teams that we're doing. But again, what if you go back to basics where you have to really employ that? You have to have knowledge, right? So knowledge of navigation, knowledge of just things that we expect we can, like Sergeant First Class Kraus is doing. He's Googling and giving us the facts, but that all gets taken away and we go kind of 50 years and back and we have to use the tools from the past. So just reminds you, no matter how much technology makes your life easier, remember you need to know your basic skills and keep that foundation. So to me, those are some books that resonate, both entertaining. There's some entertaining part in Go Sleep, but also kind of helps with what we do every day. So those are 3.
Yeah, right on. I read Ghost Fleet, and the opening salvo is just insane. Like it goes right into the war with China and America. So good reference, ma'am. Mariah, beyond just reading United States Code and Texas military, just, TCMJ stuff, what do you enjoy reading?
So one of my favorite books was Daring Greatly. It's basically like being vulnerable can actually be a strength. I found that one really interesting, but I also like action and sci-fi as well. But I'm currently reading this book called Saved, and it's about this reporter that gets bombed by Russia, and it's very interesting. And his writing style is very different than obviously, military articles and the codes that I have to read for work. So I like it because it's more descriptive. I'm used to reading concise legal type stuff. So it's really nice to have something different that's very entertaining. You're not going to see a lot of adjectives and things like that in our writing world. So it's kind of nice to have that very graphic and that kind of thing for my pleasurable reading. And then I also have a 7-year-old, so I'm doing a lot of that kind of reading. So we're reading the Chronicles of Narnia right now, which is pretty good, actually.
Yeah. That's self-help. Chronicles of Narnia, self-help without really being self-help, right? Gets right to the soul. Good stuff. TJ, what do you got, man?
Sir, I grew up on Shel Silverstein, right? Because you could just read a poem real quick and it'd be over with. One of the books I really like is Leadership by Peter Northouse, because it discusses all the different types of leadership. And the last edition included followership as part of one of the leadership tenets. I like The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. I actually read that on the way back from the deployment as I got ready to come into the seat in DeVarty. Kind of just look at some things and to get after. But really, like, the self-help type stuff is good. But a lot of the reading I do now is not reading that I'm like just searching the internet to look for something fun to read. Because I have probably about 50 pieces cited in my dissertation, and you only keep about 1 out of every 4 or 5 articles you read. So I've got a lot in the recycle bin. But like Grit by Angela Duckworth's another great book. It talks about just really, persevering and overcoming. And then like guilty pleasure type reading, Lions of Kandahar is a really good book if you hadn't had the chance to read it. But I find myself trying to reread some of the things that I felt like really hit me, just as an opportunity to reabsorb some of that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Chief, I know you only really do like audible books that are sung, being in the music industry, but maybe you pick up a comic book every now and then. What do you got, man?
Hey, I have Avengers #1. Now that's
What?
you're gonna get me going. I've got Avengers #1, 1963, sir. So don't as an old comic book kid growing up in Austin. So, that's a whole nother podcast, sir. So my wife, is like, you should sell that stuff. But most of my, it's pretty diverse, sir. And I think we've talked about self-help and all that. The formal journal stuff that I'm reading right now is more specific to stuff I'm doing with the unit. So I try to mix it up, but education journal where it's about a specific piece, and we're trying to do research on that, whether it's form, background of the composer, that kind of stuff. But guilty pleasures. My short story, and I actually did this with a book club again fairly recently, was the long walk, the Backman, which is AKA Stephen King. It's a short story, circa 79. Probably a lot of you guys have read it, but it's a great, and I get something out of it every time. But that kind of genre stuff. I'm an old Trekkie as well. Of course, I'm in a family of people and boys that hate Trek. They're Star Wars kids, so fantasy, Tolkien, the whole thing. So I don't read anything like General Trout. I don't read anything anymore that's not recommended. Like I don't get a recommendation. So I'm writing down everything everybody's saying on this. Some of it I've read, some of it I haven't. But I'm reading a really stupid series right now. It's Total Mind Candy, and it's about 15 minutes a night on Audible. That's a dungeon crawler Carl stuff. So if you're interested in, kind of reality television meets fantasy meets gaming, again, I'm on book 5. So it tells you kind of when I have a free moment, I'm sitting there in the doctor's office or the VA office or wherever I'm sitting. Hey, that's what I'm doing with that part of it.
Do you increase it to like 1.5 or 2 times the Audible so it talks real fast?
Is big as it can get. I'll put it on there. That's why my wife gave me the Kindle, because she's like, I'm tired of you squinting and wearing these fancy glasses on and stuff. But
All right.
no,
Right.
it's mixed up. I mean, the formal writing and the formal reading is 220-90, the Army band stuff. But I try to mix it up because it keeps the mind engaged.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, for you, Chief, and for everyone watching at home, we've got quite a good list of recommendations coming in from the chat. So check those out.
Well, very good. I'm glad this is recorded because then we can use that chat, because I've been writing these things down like Chief. So, hey, I would be remiss if I didn't poke Sergeant Major Warfield. What they got you in out there at the Sergeant Major's Academy? I mean, besides doctrine, I know you guys do a lot of DNC out there, right?
Yeah, right, that's sir. No, pleasure. Don't have a lot of pleasure nowadays. Touch through the academy, so I am writing ethics paper right now, which is due date, so I got to crunch down on that. But the vital significance of military ethics, it ties into what we're doing and reading the enemy.
Yeah.
So it's a good article. It's a technical subject that I'm currently engaged with, but also helps you, see the role of ethics in modern warfare and leadership. So
Yeah. Hey, Sergeant Major.
right now and all that stuff. You just got to make sure, because it's hard for me.
Yeah, you're coming a little bit broken, but I caught the vital significance of military ethics as you read. So, and all right, excellent. Hey, so look, hey folks, we're almost ready to transition to a little exercise we're going to do here. But you see that barcode on your screen. So if you want to follow along in the article that we're going to go through here, you can scan that barcode. It'll take you to a line of departure. Just a short plug for the next session we're going to do this month. So we have 2 sessions here in February. The next session we're going to have Sergeant First Class Blood on the line, and he is the deputy commander for line of departure. So we're going to get into it about line of departure next session. But we're gonna look at this article, and we're going to do a little short exercise. Nothing mind numbing or anything like that. It's going to go pretty quickly, but we will show you. So you see these first 5 steps here, right? Learn how to write from reading. So these same 5 steps, like, if you had to read something quickly for your boss, like, hey, I need you to summarize something. These are the same 5 steps you could use as a staff action officer or NCO, a battle desk NCO. Like, hey, I got to summarize something really fast. These are the 5 steps you can use to get to the meat of an article, of a paper. So we're going to get into it, but the 5 steps are: analyze the title and subtitle, scrutinize the table of contents. Obviously, articles don't have contents, so they do have section headers. We will talk about how you read the conclusion first, then you read the introduction, and then we'll talk about the most important chapters or sections. So again, we're going to be looking at an article. You can scan the barcode from line of departure to pull it up. And we're going to transition now into the exercise. All right, so check it out. So this is an 11-page article. And you can see just by looking at your screen that the last 3 pages are really citations. Now, it's probably because they got 2 JAGs that wrote this thing, Mariah. You know how JAGs like to add a lot of extra words in there for stuff. No, I'm just kidding. It's important that you cite work. So this work is called Lethal Force, Risk, and LSCO. So those of you perusing line of departure right now on your phones or devices, and you're like, hey, which one is it? That's the one it is. It's by Lieutenant General Milford Biggs Beagle Jr. He's the commanding general of PAC, which is the Combined Arms Center. I don't think I could call him Biggs, even though he did put that in, the article, like his nickname is Biggs. But I mean, that wouldn't. I don't think that would work for me. I mean, I couldn't go up to him and say, hey, Biggs, what's up? No. So, well, he's going to be Lieutenant General Beagle, or Sir for me. And then you have Lieutenant General Joseph Berger, who is the JAG for the Army. Like, man, Mariah, you should be getting excited about this article because this is going to be right in your wheelhouse. And then you have.
Oh, I'm pumped, sir.
Good. This is going to be fun. And then you have Colonel Jack D. Einhorn, who is the JAG for the National Capital Region Joint Task Force. So again, this is 11 pages. Really, we'll be focused on the 8, right? Oh, thank you, Soren Kraus. You dropped it in the chat. Very good, right? So, you can hit that link and then we'll take a look at it. So we're going to transition to step 1. Step 1, again, is look at the title and subtitles. All right. So the title of this was Lethal Force, Risk, and LSCO, right? Preparing for permissive rules of engagement in large-scale combat operations. So that tells us a lot, right? When we look at the title, it tells us it's a combination. It's the intersection of how we balance lethal force, risk, and LSCO. We can tell by looking at the authors that this is going to be substantive in JAG. The JAGs outnumber the commander 2-1 here. So it's going to be substantive in how we do that. And we can make some assumptions that really, when we think about large-scale combat operations, it's moving giant pieces on the battle space, right? These are division-sized units, corps moving across the battle space. It's easy for things to get crushed in the cogs of these machines, literally and physically, virtually, as these divisions and corps move across the battle space. So risk is going to be important, right? How we manage the rules of engagement are going to be important. So that's the title. And then let's start looking at some of the subtitles. So just so you're tracking, I have this in front of me. I don't have it like scripted. I'm not cheating here. I'm going through the same exercise as you. So that was the title. What's the first subtitle here? Let's see. First subtitle is Battlefield Next, right? And then the next subtitle is going to be Preparing for Permissive Rules of Engagement in Large-Scale Operations. So when we look at those 2 subtitles, the Battlefield Next, and I'm just scanning this document as I speak to you, right? That first subtitle tells me Battlefield Next. That's going to be like something futuristic operations, like, hey, what's happening, maybe current operations. The next subtitle, Preparing for Permissive Rules of Engagement in Large-Scale Combat Operations, tells me, hey, there's got to be some prep work, right? They're going to lay some groundwork here in this title. Then when I look at the next title, it tells me, right, and based on how this looks on the paper here, actually the font's a little bit different, the bolding's a little bit different. So it talks about that the rules of engagement cannot be the only tool for empowering subordinates to assume prudent risk in the application of lethal force, especially for an armory suffering a counterinsurgency coin hangover. So already the authors are juxtaposing. They're setting us up. We know that LSCO, they've been teaching LSCO to the Army. They're saying, hey, get ready for LSCO. put coin in the rearview mirror, right? And already the authors are setting up that juxtaposition, right? What do we know about coin, TJ? What do we remember about coin?
Well, coin counterinsurgency, we were really broken into a lot of different areas. From field artillery perspective, a lot of us did convoy security, detainee ops, and the like, as we were just put on a different mission set to kind of help maintain order during stability operations.
Yeah. Good call out. So, LSCO, we're doing military functions, standard missions, coin, non-standard missions. There was no space for us to shoot artillery and coin, really not unless it was like, illumination rounds at night to help light up the highway, the MSRs. So, the authors are setting this up. We see how they're, as we look at these subtitles, we see what they're going to try to build, right? They're going to set up a juxtaposition between what's the difference between LSCO and coin. We see it coming. All right. And then we look at the next subtitle. And it says, we must incorporate the civilian harm mitigation response action plan. That's a mouthful, right? Into our preparations for LSCO. So civilian harm mitigation and a response action plan. They use an acronym of SHMARP. I don't know how you'd say that. SHMARP. Mariah, how do I say that? How do I say that acronym? Is it SHMARP? I don't say it. I just say
I would
CHMARP.
say it's like ch, not s. But I mean, what do I know?
Okay. So, but we know it's like they're getting after something. They're saying, hey, you can't just, it's not just a juxtaposition between coin. You got to put coin in your rearview mirror. You're going to look at LSCO. We're talking about risk. We're talking about lethal force. And then, also, when we talk about lethal force, when we talk about risk, we have to talk about a mitigation response action plan, right? So we're building the suspense here. So, and I'm sure because they put the acronym in the subtitle, they 100% are going to define what that is when they go into the article. They're going to define it, right? So then we move on to the next subtitle, and I'm going to read it right here from, so LSCO rules of engagement alone will not adequately convey a commander's risk tolerance. Oh, wow. So that's a new concept they just threw at us. And we've heard this before, risk tolerance, right? And I know with LSCO, if you've been in some training for, if you read FM 3-0, they talk about risk tolerance. Jared, what do you think? What's risk tolerance in your mind? When you see those words, how do you envision risk tolerance? What do you think that means?
I guess it's, am I going to put my quotes up or not first? I don't want to plagiarize anybody. No, it's that, when do we need to have that health safety check of let's stop, breathe, get together and kind of, is this something of a normal everyday activity? Like I'm driving to work. Do I really need to stop and do some of the safety checks? Maybe I'm doing it on mine, but some of this risk tolerance, right? You're moving big, huge equipment. It's something that's not in our normal operations. We're going to want to look at it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the key. So we're used to risk mitigation, right? And I know Matt's seen this a couple of times. Matt, you're used to risk mitigation, but now here's risk tolerance. If we had to put those in the scale and we say, what's the difference between risk tolerance and risk mitigation? What are you thinking, Matt?
I would say it's what concessions are commanders willing to make in order to achieve their end state. The easy example that we don't like to talk about is what's an acceptable loss of personnel.
Yeah.
In an operation. Obviously, none is always the answer, but at some point in a LSCO environment, none is not going to be the answer, and so we've really got to analyze that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I mean, and we could probably pull up some numbers. We got an R&D guy on that, but if you looked at World War II, like the invasion of Normandy, how many people either died on the beach, or we've all seen Band of Brothers, right, where these guys are flying over and they're getting ready to jump in. Like how many? I mean, you saw the footage in Band of Brothers. Like planes are just crashing, burning up in the air. Thousands of lives lost. what is the acceptable risk? I mean, if you look back at COIN, right? And because again, this is how the authors set it up. They want us to compare. When we look back at COIN and we say, what was an acceptable loss of life? Ma'am, General Trout, like you did COIN operations. What would you say was an acceptable loss of life when you were overseas?
Yeah, obviously, when we were doing COIN, I'm not going to use the surge as an example, but it was zero, right? The whole
Yeah.
point was you left safely and you wanted to have all your equipment and people returned back safely. And with LSCO, we all know that is not an achievable objective. And so just like in World War II and World War I.
Right. Yeah, right on. Okay. So we know. So here, again, the authors are building suspense, right? They're building toward a great unveil. Look at the. All right, let me read this to you here. Commanders owe it to their subordinates to articulate their risk tolerance in the application of lethal force
Hey, so Colonel Elband just dropped off, and he was talking about training their subordinates really to execute within that risk tolerance. So, and the way to do that is getting after tactical directives and vignettes. Both of them are great ways. Between the tactical directives and the vignettes, you can really help enable the followers and subordinates to understand exactly what you're trying to get after, or what the maneuver commander is trying to get after from as their end state and what they're willing to accept. Sir, back over to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, obviously I didn't do any risk mitigation plans for loss of internet. So I guess my tolerance for internet loss is pretty high because, we have to work with what we got. So it's all good. But hey, TJ, thanks for covering down. And really, hey, look at the structure of this title, this subtitle. They put 2 sentences here. That's different than all the other subtitles, right? 2 sentences, that means something, right? And so, not only do commanders have to do something, they're also telling them, hey, this is what you're going to do. So this was the big unveil, right? This is like, hey, if I look at subtitles, it's the leading, it's going to crescendo. This is it. The tactical directives and vignettes are a great way to do so. So then we look at the next subject, or I'm sorry, the next line, which is vignettes, right? Leading into it, they're going to say, hey, they're going to tell you what the importance of vignettes are. They're going to tell you that. So we know when vignettes are important because they just gave a subtitle strictly to vignettes. And then they do tactical directives. And they say, hey, it's not just vignettes. You're going to give tactical directives to your subordinate commanders. And so when we think about tactical directives, and, in our minds, it's not just op orders, right? It's going to be that commander to commander dialogue, because that's how these tactical directives tend to come out, command dialogue. Okay.
Hey, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you got it.
I was just saying, I mean, what they consider tactical directives and how they got after it was, it specifically quotes, amplify their intent through a tactical directive to ensure disciplined initiative in using lethal force. And I think that disciplined initiative, like, that's what you get from the directives that you don't get from the vignettes. Mm-hmm. Chief?
Yeah, I was just gonna tie it in. This is gonna be out there a little bit, but the vignettes, the art of command, that you're talking about reading and writing and getting past the form that's taught, say public school, like we discussed a while back, the introduction, the 3-body paragraphs and closing. The vignettes are that passed on. How do we get our subordinate commanders to visualize and think past the tactical, the op orders and the formality, right? The regs and things. How do we get them to understand where our limits, in this piece are to moving forward? Can they visualize it? Can they use their imagination? Kind of that art of command part of this. That the stuff that you can't really read and put boundaries on, and then getting that understanding. And I think that's that reading and writing. Even if you're reading Total Candy, like we discussed earlier, how do we put that with the other and get our subordinates and get our fellow soldiers to visualize and really understand what's past the formality of it. I mean, I'm not probably saying that the right way, but we talk a lot about the art of command in the reading and writing, and the vignettes is a way to pass that on and to try to get them think outside the box. No, you're right.
It's the tangible
Yes, sir.
part,
Yes, sir.
right? It's and Mariah can probably talk a little bit about this, because look, a lot of our audience are on Operation Lone Star, right? And when we give the rough rules for the use of force in Lone Star, what do we use, Mariah? What do we use to convey them, to tell
We
them
use
how to do it?
vignettes because it's easier for them to understand than the policy or than the rough itself, because it is complicated and it has legal words that they may not understand. And I think with regard to this article, it talks about why is it important for vignettes? Why is it important for LISCO as opposed to COIN? Well, in COIN, you're going to have your JAG in that op cell helping you devise the strike, but in large scale combat operations, they might be over a geographic region. So you're going to rely on vignettes to train your commander, because they may not be able to have that exact moment with their JAG. They're going to be making decisions. So you want these vignettes to give them examples of how they can make those decisions in that time period.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And sir, historically, again, as a father, right? As a father, you pass on stories, and that's it. That goes back eons in terms of getting that experience over and trying to engage. In the vignettes, as we've read as commanders to our soldiers, whether it's going over this new policy. Hey, here's eight vignettes on, again, the formal meeting the practical. There's no two situations are exactly the same. No two situations are ever exactly the same, particularly for a commander that's out in the field engaging, on the tip of the spear. So this is all part of that.
Yeah, and we're leaving them to figure it out, and they need the vignettes and the tactical directives, the specified clear intent to kind of get after that. So the last section these authors introduce is Battlefield Next, Take Two. And so look, we kind of put this in juxtaposition. I know I'm using that word a lot. Sorry, I should probably consult my thesaurus, but a side-by-side comparison, right, with how they opened. So they started with Battlefield Next. Now they say Battlefield Next Part 2. And so that kind of gives us an idea that these are kind of doing like maybe gap analysis. They're starting with a current state, they're working towards a future state, and they're going to show us the difference in between. And so that's what we're kind of looking at. So that was just step one, reviewing the titles and subtitles. Now we're going to go to step two, which is kind of like reading the conclusion. So when you go to this article, you'll see this conclusion is actually a couple pages. It's not pages in whole, but you got one page with a couple paragraphs on it. All right. And then as we advance, you got the second page with the final paragraph on it. And so I pulled these words out for you so you guys can take a look and you can see them on your screens. But and I'm not going to read the whole things to you, but I'm going to point out some things in their conclusion when we look at the actual words of the conclusion. So let's see here. It's on page. All right. So when we look at that first paragraph of the conclusion, they have a couple questions in there. It's interesting, right? So questions are important indicators as we tear something apart. You got your action officer hat on and you're trying to hey, I'm trying to figure out what's this article about. So they put some questions in there, right? The first paragraph of the conclusion says, hey, if the commander thinks that just one indicator is enough, how does he reconcile that with the CHMRAP, right? What was that acronym again, Mariah? Did you write that down?
I wish you wouldn't call me out because I don't know. I feel like it's trap. I don't know.
I can't remember. What was that acronym? Hold on, let me go back. I'm not.
I got it.
It's CHMRAP.
Yeah, Civilian Harm Mitigation Response Action Plan. We said it was important. I failed to write that stuff down. So okay, so here we go. There it was, right? And then another question they ask us at the end is like, hey, even more challenging than intelligence threshold question is, what would the commander do with ample intelligence that a bunker was a military target and a reliable intelligence that it also housed civilians, right? And then it goes to more questions. What are some feasible precautions that we can take to mitigate risk civilians? More questions. How many civilian casualties is a commander willing to accept? Right, these are all questions, right? And if you remember from session 1, we talked about the conclusion of a body paragraph being the invert of the introduction paragraph. Like introduction paragraph, you start broad brushstrokes and you focus down to a narrow concept. Well, in the conclusion, what you're doing is you're starting with a narrow concept and you're focusing, or you're widening your aperture out. So these questions are leading questions to get to a general application of some of the lessons that these folks are trying to teach us. So then when we look at the last paragraph, it wraps it up, all right, and it talks about professional military judgment, right? It talks about the importance of vignettes. The vignettes allow commanders to show their subordinates how to engage in moral and ethical reasoning. It talks about discussions where you give tactical directives, right? And then the last thing they do for us is they kind of give us that, hey, future setting. So it's not really part of the conclusion, but it's like, hey, if we take the lessons we learn and we re-envision that scenario that we set up at the beginning, this is what we get. All right, so that was step 2. On to step 3. Oh, yep. Okay, that was part of step 2 too. So that was the paragraph we called out. Yep, that was the other paragraph we called out. All right, and then now we're on to step 3. Okay, read the conclusion. Oh, sorry, step 4. Yeah, you're right. So we're on to step 4. Read the conclusion first. All right. Okay. All right. We read the conclusion. Now we're going to read the introduction. All right. Hey, look, I just talked about that. You know, oh, wait, go back one. We're too fast. Go back another one. All right. I think that's the introduction. Yeah. So that's the introduction. Right. So the introduction. Again, assuming that the battlefield next is basically a current scenario. Really, the introduction takes place once we get that first topic, which is preparing for permissive rules of engagement in large-scale combat operations. And it says, okay, check this out. This is a technique that you can use, right? This is not copying somebody's idea. Listen to how they open up this paragraph. The purpose of this article is to provide ... They're throwing it out there. They're telling you why they wrote this article. Now that's not necessarily the thesis, but they are telling you, hey, why did we do this? Right? And they say the purpose of this article is to provide commanders and subordinates like Major Casey from this scenario they gave us in Battlefield Next, with the confidence to assume prudent risk in the application of lethal force under permissive rules of engagement, right? They go on to say, and they say, hey, you know, that's the purpose, but they go on to say, they elaborate, right? And I pulled out some of these words for you in the next screenshot you'll see, but it says this article will aid in the development of that confidence by framing the challenge ahead of offering commanders ways to ensure their subordinates understand their risk tolerance for the application of lethal force, right? And it goes back to those concepts we.
I think he got tired of talking.
Right.
Yeah,
There's that risk. Every time
back.
it's almost like every time I say risk tolerance, the internet cuts out. It's like a cue or something. I don't know. Okay. All right. So this is what I was reading to you. Let me just reread it again real quick, since I think I was lost due to internet shortages. This article will aid in the development of that confidence by framing the challenge ahead and offering commanders ways to ensure their subordinates understand their risk tolerance for the application of lethal force, right? So not only did they give you the purpose of the article, but they also say, hey, what this article is going to do for you, right? And then they go forward and they keep talking more about like, hey, they expand on what this article is going to do for you, and then they go into the next paragraph, right? Go again. Yeah. All right, here we go. Right, so we're going to get to the next paragraph. Commanders must be confident in their ability to conduct a LOAC analysis. Jared, oh boy. Did I lose you guys again?
You're good.
No, we got you. I think that's a JAG question, LOAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more like JAG. That's what it sounds like to me.
I was going to let Kraus, I was going to see what he said. I was very interested.
Let's see. Let's find out. Hold on. I'm not as smart as you guys, right? I only read a book.
But
like
you have the
this too,
Googleizer, so that's cheating.
It's right. We're talking about law of armed conflict. Is that what we're talking about? Is that what it is? There's 4 principles in it: the
You're
military
correct.
necessity, distractions. Can't even understand that word. And humanity.
Okay, I'm back. Was Jared was Jared taking over for me?
He was.
Probably because the last word it cut out was Jared right before I cut off, right?
You had it
Yeah.
almost right, Jared. You were very close. Distinction was the D one, but you got all the other ones right.
Distinction. Yeah. There we go. Right. The four breaks it down 4 different ways.
Yeah. Did you guys define LOAC, Law of Armed Conflict? One of these acronyms out there, right?
He did.
Yeah, great. So you got to have confidence, all right? And then, so we look at these paragraphs and we're trying to isolate where the thesis is. Go advance one. Advance another. There we go. All right. So this basically gets to the thesis. And so they had multiple paragraphs opening the introduction, multiple introduction paragraphs. They set the purpose, they say what the article is going to do for you. But in reality, the thesis is this: to change the culture to one that views rules of engagement as an enabler to mission accomplishment, we need to share ideas and engage in debate, and we need to do so now, right? By the time we are in the fight, it will be too late. So that's what they're trying to sell to us. So they're trying to do a mental shift here. And Mariah, I'm gonna go to you because this, I think you deal with this a lot. And when you talk to soldiers and when you guys are given the brief for rules for the use of force or rules of engagement, I mean, you kind of get those looks like you guys are tying our hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what these guys are saying is the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think they don't realize that we're trying to protect them. Like, I'll just use OLS as an example because it's easier to talk about in this context for right now. We're giving them the left and right limits of the state law, which we all are liable under. And so we're trying to help them, but they see it as, hey, I need to do my job. I need to do all these other things, but we have to explain that. And I mean, that's our job, is to train, in an ROE type of environment. It would be our commanders to make the decisions. In the REF, we're training pretty much everybody, commanders, the people that are actually doing, working the line, those type of things. So I think it's all about how you have to teach people what you're teaching them, in addition to the actual substance of whatever you're going over. In our case would be the rules of use of force.
So, ma'am, do you think this article is laid out like we're discussing today? We're discussing kind of that form. Like when we emulate this form, if somebody's writing, would you use this form as hey, this is a good model for something that I would put out as a JAG officer?
I mean, maybe not this exact form, but I think those important subcategories are helpful in any type of writing, because obviously if you want to look at something quickly and you want to go to an area, you're going to look at those and go to that particular area. So I think we all use those, the big headers and the subcategories to make sure that we're pinpointing those ideas, so that if you want to go to the article, like if you're looking for something specific, you can read that. And if it's not on point, you're not wasting your time reading the entire article. So I do think that it's helpful and important, and taking those headings seriously, make sure that they reflect the content in those sections is important. So to that part, yes.
Sure. No, it's
writing is pretty unique. So we have, we do it in a little bit different way, but overall, I think you could use this form pretty much in any kind of writing.
Right. And from an old teacher perspective, we would say, hey, that these steps would be, they're sort of level one. Hey, I don't have time to go through this, or is this article something that I want to pursue in more depth? as an example. Hey, I'm gonna read the introduction, get the main idea, skim these big points, hit the conclusion, hit the dessert, and that clues me in to context clues. I'm gonna go back now, and I know exactly where the emphasis is on, based off those questions at the end. I mean, you remember being in school. We all remember being in school. Hey, I'm gonna hit the end. These are the questions that I need to focus on to get the answers. I don't want to hit it at level 3. So, form wise, it certainly makes sense to me. But hey, if we're skimming at level 1 or level 2 because we don't have a ton of time, I'm getting those main points that then I can research a little bit later or emulate. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Chief. Like, I mean, Colonel Hildebrand mentioned it when he was talking about it. Purpose, right? I can't tell you how many times I've opened up an article and done a Control F, purpose, and then findings, right? What is the purpose? What are the findings? And if they're not of interest to what I'm trying to get after, next, please. So yeah, that was.
Yeah. Yeah. Another quick tip on that same methodology. So most times when you read an article, no one ever wants it to be negative. But if you do a search for the word not, N-O-T, it quickly gets to point, because what oftentimes writers do is they try to figure out how they stand in opposition to something. And so, during a quick search for not, it will draw you almost to all the important elements of an article, for sure. Okay. Those are the steps for breaking down an article, and we did it. We did it on here. So the next thing I want to show you all is like, hey, when we mimic structure, if I wanted to write an article, let's say, hey, I love this article by Biggs and General Berger and Einhorn, and I said, hey, I want to get after it. I want to figure out how. I love the setup. I love how they did it. I want to write something similarly. You can take the structure of an article, and we broke it down here by using those same steps before, but we just put it in blocks so people can see like how they constructed an outline. They started with a vignette. The vignette was the current situation, Battlefield Next. Hey, this guy's trying to figure out, should I shoot something or should I not shoot something? I'm in the Jadget. Then they do intro. They have a purpose paragraph and a thesis paragraph. They take a position. Then they assert some bold statements. Your bold statements are your subtitles, right? They can also be very closely related to your topic sentences of each paragraph. And then they finish it off by reasserting their claims and tell you how you can take these lessons learned and apply them to wider applications, right? And then they finish with a vignette. So, if this article is something that resonated with you, you could take this article and say, I like what they did here. I like how they did it. And you could mimic the structure, not just how they set it up with the title, subtitle, questions, the purpose of this article. Does this make sense to everybody here?
It does, sir. And I'll tell you, sir, you mentioned on that previous one, hey, the vignette is the hook, right? That first vignette is the hook, or the equivalent of the General Bowen getting up there and sort of telling that little story, that joke that gets everybody sort of pulled in, and then you hit those points and then you reaffirm it. So I think we've all heard so many different areas where this applies, whether it's a speech or a podcast or a class, or certainly this article.
Yeah, right on. Okay. So we're just, this was it. This is pretty much what we were going to cover this session. Ma'am, I'll turn it over to you for any closing comments or final thoughts on any of these topics we discussed today.
No, thanks. Hey, I was just actually chatting because I have to get off and run to a meeting. But so no, I think you guys are spot on. So a couple of things I just want to tell everybody: as you go into school much, we probably, at least when I was in the War College, I probably had to read about 500 pages a night, which, the first couple of weeks you think I'm going to do it. So I was really fit because I would be walking on a treadmill or on elliptical for hours at a time. But the reality is that's really hard to do. And unless you're just a amazingly speed reader, it can't be done. But there are things like SpeedC and other things that you can look. So just for guys, if you do need to read and like really not just skim, that you may look at to help you. And those are just tools. Again, I'm all about tools and then of course how to incorporate that in. But I think what's important for everyone here is, for yourself, your subordinates, your leaders, the reality is time is money, right? And so when you're reading or getting tasked to do something to synthesize, a decision or information, exactly what happens, right? We need you to be succinct, get to the main points, and give the bottom line bluff. And so I think if you can learn to do that in both civilian emails, military, you're going to advance very much in life. So I think this is really important, and something that we have to focus on as a whole. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that, ma'am. And thank you for being our guest today. Thanks for the Writing Roundtable for covering down to me, for me as the risk tolerance of the internet exceeded my capabilities. So, hey, just a quick admin note, the deck that got sent out to everybody, it's not the same deck that we presented here today. It does lack the exercise, but what it does give you, it gives you a robust suite of tools. So if the exercise is something you're looking for, you can reach out to Major Cox. They'll send you the exercise. If this is something you want to borrow, dare I say, plagiarize and do with your soldiers or service members, please feel free. But it's there for everybody. And of course, being on YouTube, you can rebroadcast this at any time. So that being said, signing off here from Building 75 at beautiful Camp Mabry, Texas. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, sir.
Have a great day.